See You Later, Alligator. Where did you hear that song? Why did you end up singing it on the way home? Who heard you, and what were the consequences of all that?
Well, I was a bit younger than Chris, Mike and Lee, the keyboard player, sax player and guitarist, started the band, The Invaders. And they were in a gang called the Aldenham Glamour Boys, who I used to sort of look up to from Kentish Town. And their claim to fame was they used to jump on the goods trains from Kentish Town West, sometimes travel as far as... The Cortinas used to come up from the Ford factory at Dagenham and stop at the crossings at Kentish Town West. And they were sort of in this sort of Bob Dylan hobo idea, but, you know, it wasn't quite the same going through Morden, Penge. But they did make it to France a couple of times. Anyway, I was sort of hanging about with them and looking up to them, and we went to see the film American Graffiti, which was a real epochal moment for us. It was the first time I'd ever seen a film where the music was as loud as the dialogue, and it was all that great stuff, and Chuck Berry and Fats Domino and all that. And I was just singing when we came out of the cinema, and three of the Aldenham Glamour Boys were staring at me going, "Oi, do you want to be in our band?" And they had a singer who'd left, and I had absolutely no intention of being a singer, and probably have never fulfilled that role anyway.
Shut up, you're brilliant.
Go on, sorry, what?
You're amazing. So of you are.
Anyway, I certainly didn't have the intention, but I had some sort of charisma, and fortunately the band were in their very sort of fledgling stage, so we were all learning and growing together.
Okay, what was the most important early gig for you?
Well, funny enough, Heavy Petal, a flower shop in Hampstead High Street.
Heavy Petal.
I've got to say, there were more bouquets than fans, but we were going down a storm when a big gang of teddy boys came in at the back, and they weren't particularly impressed and started lobbing everything to get their hands on. Roses, chrysanthemums, huge chunks of Oasis, the green foam, not the band. And Mike, our keyboard player's older brother, was in a band called Bazooka Joe, who were like a sort of rock and roll band. He jumped up and did Jailhouse Rock. And the teddy boys dropped the buckets and started happily driving at the back. And I thought, hang on, we're getting somewhere.
That sounds like such a moment in a movie. Hey, this kid's got something.
Movie in my mind. No, so many, Chris, so many.
Okay.
I mean,
and punk was going on. You were a massive punk fan, weren't you?
I lived just up the road from the Roxy. I didn't really know what was going on. I was about 16, but I just happened chanced upon that phenomenon, which was, changed my life.
And a lot of the rest of the band, Roundhouse was big for them in gigs, wasn't it? So what other bands did, because there was so many, I mean, Camden was a great place to be, wasn't it? I mean, still is. Dublin Castle, all that kind of stuff. I mean, what kind of bands were trafficking through there at the time?
Well, it was, we were out every night watching bands, every single night.
Give us like 5 or 6.
Plummet Airlines, the original Gorillas, remember the big sideburns? Yeah. Sinceros. I mean, but I seen, Dire Straits in the Hope and Anchor, 40 people. Dire Straits.
Wow.
Only 2 numbers.
Yeah. 3 hours.
They were blooming long lines. Can I go to the toilet now? Oh, salt or whatever. Come on, mate.
And that's what their fans are still saying nowadays. But more and more. Me, one of them, by the way. When you go to gigs nowadays of certain bands, the queues for the toilet is longer than the queues for the bar. And it's really depressing, that moment when that happens.
But I'd tell you one very epochal moment. Funny enough, was in the Hope and Anchor. Yes. This band called The Specials turned up. And we'd sort of heard about them.
What year was this? 79?
So this has been 78, 79, yeah. And these 7 fellas, exactly the same as us in two-tone suits, pork pie hats. And they were from Coventry. And they were playing ska. And I didn't know whether to feel jealous or vindicated that we were onto something after all. And they were playing ska, and Neville starts jumping about on stage, blowing holes in the ceiling with a starting pistol.
This is in the Hope and Anchor.
In the Hope and Anchor.
The Hope and Anchor is about the size of this.
Exactly,
I know.
exactly.
So funny.
And the end of that story is, Jerry Dammers came up to me, who's the keyboard player and started Two Tone Records, and he had no teeth and still doesn't. He's very proud of the fact. Why he hasn't, I don't know. But the best chance you had of finding somewhere to stay after a gig was pulling a bird. And with them teeth, he ended up keeping on my mum's sofa. Anyway, late into the night, Jerry says to me, I want to start a record label, and I'm thinking about like an English Motown. I says, Jerry, don't you think that's a smidge optimistic, seeing he just played to 35 people in a pub basement?
Yeah.
But 6 months later, he rang me up and said, I've done it, so because I've got this record label called Two Tone. And we were barely sort of able to play our own instruments.
Yeah.
So that moment, really, when we met Jerry Dammers.
But that moment and the other moment and the moment before, there's so many, and they've all got to click, because if one of them doesn't, it doesn't happen, does it? And that's stellar. That is heaven sent for those things to happen.
That's right. I mean, the fact all of us are in this room now, you think of all the people that have gone before us and, whatever, without getting too wars and all that. But no, I mean, that's the, you know, when people ask me their advice, I mean, you need so much of that, and so much of it needs to click for whatever reason, luck.
Yeah.
But I do think, you know, you can also make your own luck up to a certain
just
point.
keep going.
I mean, sticking together, I always say.
going.
When I meet bands who are finding it hard, just keep going. Try.
Well, Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. I think if you want to be successful, keep going. You know, history is one damn thing after another. Depends on how you look at it, that kind of stuff.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show with Sky.